Hello, good afternoon. I saw the date there was wrong on this main screen there, but it's today's Thursday, January 30th, 2025. Happy New Year, happy Lunar New Year to everyone. And you're here at the Audit Committee, and we're going to get started with roll call first.
Audit Committee Member Edwin Belen,
Present.
Ed Kachadurian,
Here.
and Chair Alex Parajon.
Present. All right. Item 2, business agenda.
Item number 2, business agenda, Part A, report of recording secretary regarding posting of agenda. The agenda for the January 30th, 2025 Audit Committee meeting was posted on January 23rd, 2025 on the bulletin board outside City Hall.
Okay. Great, thank you. Next item, item 3.
Item number 3, oral communications. Discussion is limited to items not a part of this agenda. Each speaker is allowed 3 minutes. The committee may question or respond to the speaker, but there will be no debate or decision. The Audit Committee Chair may refer the matter to staff for investigation and report. And Mr. Chair, we have a speaker card on this item.
Great, thank you. I do have him here, so we'll call up the first one for item 3 that they want to discuss here. So this will be Herberto Molano.
Audit Committee Chair and members, my name is Herbert Milano. I've spoken before the Audit Committee years ago, but I still, every year, I read over the annual financial reports. And I want to make a couple of suggestions. First of all, I am encouraging for the committee to suggest to the City Council to expand your function to not just once a quarter, but every month. There are enough issues with each and every part of the CAFR and the city departments that I think it needs a review for fire and police 1 month, public works another month, GWP another month, parks and recreation open space another month. I think it is absolutely necessary because it is getting complex. We already exceeded $1 billion in expenditures years ago, and we're still remaining with only once a month, and I think it needs to be expanded. I would also like to suggest, that maybe you can start focusing on KPIs, key performance indicators, because after all, performance should be one of the functions of the Audit Committee. I will give you a very brief example. I did a study on the fire department's response with regard to cardiac arrest, and find out that we are doing significantly less than 10% survivability, and we have cities like Seattle and King County, and they have a 60% survivability. I have mentioned this to the City Council members, but it's not necessarily being reported on or evaluated, and I think an evaluation of that is super important. The second thing I want to talk about is the education and exposure to this current City Council, to members who may want to serve, and also to potential candidates for office. I obtained this particular book from Gatsby. It is a guide to financial statements. It's a much more readable type of document than the actual CAFR. I'm sorry, I'm still calling it by the old name. And I talked to Dean Michael Mead, who is the author, and he's willing to provide free of charge a class if we can collect about 12 individuals who will participate remotely, and they'll get it approved. I think it is an essential thing for new members to the City Council and current council members to truly become acquainted with the impact of their decisions on the city's financial state. Third item I want to speak about are the suggestions that I have with regard to contracts. I don't know how much time I still have. Can anybody tell me? How much? 31 seconds. I'm suggesting that contracts exceeding $5 million, all the contracts be reviewed for compliance to proper notification. And also I'm suggesting that employee recruitment be open for at least 30 days. I've seen too many, I don't want to be interrupted, but I just wanted to talk about this particular issue. It's a very serious one, and I have the data to support it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Milano. Appreciate your comments, and we took good notes here, and we'll definitely, committee and the staff here will take a look and see what we can do to implement some of the stuff that you're saying. I know for a fact that we meet quarterly, and monthly, sometimes depending on audit reports being finalized timely, we might not have action items, but we'll see what that partake. Plus also being a organization of volunteers, sometimes it's hard to get the whole committee here, so we'll see what we can do on that as well. And then obviously all the key points you identified as well were well taken, and we'll take a note on that. So thank you. All right. Next item, approval of minutes, item 4.
Item number 4, approval of minutes. Part A, minutes of the Audit Committee meeting held on July 25, 2024.
I'll move to approve. I'll second.
Great. Roll call on that, please.
Committee member Edwin Belen,
Yes.
Ed Cachadurian,
Yes.
and Chair Alex Parajon.
Yes. Next action item will be 5.
Item number 5, action items.
We don't have any, right? Okay. Move on to number 6.
Item number 6, reports and information. Part A, annual comprehensive financial report and report to the Audit Committee from Clifton Larson Allen LLP. Teresa Clark, Finance Accounting Manager.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon. Good afternoon, Chair Parajon and committee members. I'm here today to present the annual comprehensive financial report, or better known as ACT, for first fiscal year ended June 30, 2024. I will also be presenting the fiscal year end audit results, financial update. Then I will be calling Daphne Munoz, engagement partner from Clifton Larson Allen, who will be doing her presentation. The city received an unmodified opinion. It means that we complied with the generally accepted accounting principles and all government accounting standards. No material weaknesses were noted. This means that our checks and balances are sufficient. And lastly, the auditors has no disagreement with management. Next is the statement of activities for all funds. This statement is similar to a net income statement for all in the private sector. The statement is broken down into 2 types: government activities and business activities. Government activities are activities paid by taxes and grants. The biggest fund will be general fund. Then we also have special revenue funds, capital improvement funds, and debt service. In fiscal year 2024, government activities reported an increase in net position by 7 million. Business activities are similar to an enterprise. These funds will cover their costs through user fees and charges for services. Examples of funds in business activities are electric, water, and sewer. In fiscal year ended June 30, 2024, business activities reported an increase in net position by 56 million. The city's total net position is 1.9 billion as at the end of June 30, 2024. Next, I will be calling on Daphne Munoz, engagement partner from Clifton Larson Allen, to talk about the fiscal year and audit result in more detail.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Again, my name is Daphne Munoz, and I am the engagement partner principal for the audit of the City of Glendale for the year for the year ended June 30, 2024. So I'm going to go over 3 bullet points. First, I'm just going to go over our scope of services, and I'm going to just talk over our opinion, and then lastly, I'll go over the required communications. These are communications required by our professional standards. So for our scope of services, we performed an audit of the annual financial statements for the year ended June 30, 2024, in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards as well as generally accepted government auditing standards. We are also doing a compliance audit of federal grant expenditures in accordance with uniform guidance, and that is currently in process. We expect to finish it. We're doing our field work currently. We expect to finish that in the next month or so. And also, we perform an agreed upon procedures related to the city's appropriations limit. So the very first page of the annual comprehensive financial report is our auditor's opinion. The first paragraph talks about the period that is covered by our audit, and that is July 1st, 2023 to June 30, 2024. And it also talks about the opinion that we provided, our opinion for the year ended 2024. As Ms. Clark mentioned, we have an unmodified opinion, which means that the financial statements are presented in all material respects in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. Management is responsible for the presentation and the fair preparation of the financial statements. Our responsibility as auditors is to express opinions on those financial statements. We have obtained reasonable assurance that the financial statements are free of material misstatements, not absolute, because we do not test 100% of the transactions that happen during the year. Again, we have performed our audit in accordance with GAS, with government auditing standards and generally accepted auditing standards. So I'm going to go over the required communications, and one first is the plan, scope, and timing of our audit was communicated during our planning meeting with management. Management is responsible for the selection of the appropriate accounting principles, and all these accounting principles are presented in Note 1 to the financial statements. The financial statements include significant estimates for which actual results could vary from what's included in the financial statements, and some of the most sensitive and significant statements in the financial statements are the required contributions, pension expense, net pension liability, and the deferred inflows related to the CalPERS defined pension plan and the PARS supplementary retirement plan. As far as the CalPERS defined pension plan, those estimates are based on actuarial valuation by actuaries from CalPERS. With regards to the PARS supplementary retirement plan, that is provided by an actuary that is hired by the city. The OPEB expense and net pension OPEB liability and related deferred inflows and outflows are based on estimates provided by an actuary hired by the city, as well as the sick leave conversion related to the expense and liability related to the city's retiree health savings plan. The claims payable are also based on an actuarial valuation, and the liability related to the landfill post-closure is provided by the LA County Sanitation District. We did not have any difficulties during our audit. We did not have any disagreements during the course of our audit. The management has provided us what we call a representation letter dated November 19th, 2024, which coincides with the date of our audit opinion. And in this letter, the management has represented to us that they have provided us all information pertinent to our audit. And lastly, to our knowledge, the city did not consult with other accountants regarding auditing our accounting matters. That concludes my presentation. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
I had a quick question. In the item that you submitted around internal control over financial reporting, it talks about how, as a basis for your audit, you do some control testing, but you might not necessarily identify significant or material weaknesses. Just for my understanding, if there were issues, you would continue to test till you would identify a material weakness? Like, when would you ever identify one?
So what we do is we do what we call sampling. At a certain point, if there are certain levels, right? So we will do testing. If within the first 25, we found one sample, we'll expand our sample. And then after we expanded our sample and we found another error, that means it's a pervasive one, then the purpose of our internal control testing, one is again to understand the processes and also to see if we can actually rely on the internal controls to see if there's risks that we have to consider when doing our substantive testing, because then we'll have to determine what kind of testing we have to do for the account balances. With your question as far as the material weakness, some of the material weaknesses that we may have might not even be from our internal control testing. Some of them could just be a result of our substantive testing. As an example, if during our audit, if our audit procedures resulted into a material audit adjustment, that is actually what our professional standards dictates us to actually, if there's a material misstatement, it is a material weakness. That means that there was a breakdown in control at that point that resulted to that material misstatement.
Got it. Thank you.
Mr. Kachatourian?
Yeah, I have a quick question. In the introduction section of this report, I was just looking at your future forecast for the general funds in terms of the resources and expenditures. And I noticed that, for fiscal year 24-25 through 27-28, it looks like the outlays, expenditures, go up, or rather, well, the revenues go up at a rate of 5-6 million a year, except for that last year. But then I see that the expenditure shows a major jump, sort of, in 28-29. Could you just explain what the source of that might be? And then the other question that I have, and obviously this creates a gap there. So the reason why we see a drop in the reserves is because obviously the city has to tap into the reserves to cover that expenditure. That's your projection anyways, right? And so
I actually am going to refer to the staff, because this is the introductory section with regards to their forecast. This is not something that we prepare.
okay.
I can take a shot at it while Shijun comes up to the, no, don't go anywhere just yet. It's not that easy. That's actually a question for our budget staff, not necessarily our accounting staff. I'm not really sure exactly what you're looking at, but it looks like you may be looking at a 5-year forecast of some sort.
Yeah.
I just don't have it in front of me. What we anticipate over the next several years is that our revenues actually end up going down in 28, 29 because we anticipate the landfill, Shoal Canyon landfill closing. When the Shoal Canyon landfill closes, about $10 million worth of annual revenue, somewhere between 8 and 10, depending on what the tipping fees bring in, decrease. So those are the years where we anticipate we not only dip into reserves, but we also begin to rely on the city's Section 115 trust that was established to help offset some of our employee expenses.
Okay.
I don't know if you have anything more.
No, I think you cover all already.
Okay.
Okay.
And no more questions?
Oh, yeah, just the only part was that the expenditure seems to go up significantly after 27, 28. That's, or not really that much, but like $2-3 million more, but I think that explains it. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. I think we have a speaker, actually, someone with comments here?
Yes, we have a speaker card on this item.
Yeah, so can we get, thank you very much. Can we get Humberto Milano here for agenda item 6A?
How much time do I have?
3 minutes.
I would like to refer to page 20 of the financial reports. This section covers partially the Section 115 trust. And the document tells us that there's a 4.24 average annual return. And I think that since this is a kind of a management report here that's been added, that it should be relevant to what the actual return is from CalPERS. I look at CalPERS returns, average returns annually, since this particular fund was established. And they're returning 7.2% annually versus 4.24%. So I think in order to make this information more relevant to the public, that maybe that information should be enhanced and put in a way that can contrast what those funds actually would be. $42 million going to CalPERS would have given us a much better return than putting it aside on the Section 115. I've also have a suggestion with regard to, the suggestion is that at least 2 pages of the statistical report be audited. I'm particularly interested in pages 239, which is the number of employees. The problem with page 239 is that it's giving you a budgeted number, and I don't see why a budgeted number should be there in the CAFR. That's why we have a budget and we have a CAFR, which are the actuals. That page should all be the actual number of employees as of the end of the fiscal year. And it allows us, with that number, to be able to better assess the performance of many of these departments. I also want to make a suggestion with regard to page 241, that we enhance the information with regard to the fire department, so they could have at least another line for major structural fires, separately wildfires, another line for sudden cardiac arrest, and another one for strokes. The reason for that is that those are like the most important key performance indicators that we expect from the fire department, right? Because if you know that there are only 6 structural fires during the whole year, it gives you a much better perspective, right? Than taking care of a trash can on fire, for example. If we have the actual number of stroke victims that actually our number of calls for strokes versus the actual number of survivals, I think having those 2 numbers gives us a very quick idea of the quality of the performance of the fire department. Let's see. Yeah, those are the 2 items that I have time to discuss right now.
Mr. Milano, I really appreciate, real good attention to detail, eyes, looking at that, and I know, and I completely understand the concept of you wanting to see more detail on the fire section there, just because, obviously, it just shows sworn and civilians. That's about it. Nothing detailed as to some scenarios. So, appreciate the comments you made. I think they're well noted for future, and I'm glad the CPA firm is out here to listen in as well to see what they can look at. But I know we have, I know there's other internal audits that are done that are just separate, and that's maybe something that eventually down the road we can recommend to the staff to do for us for more of a separate audit to see what we can look at in detail of the fire department staffing. So, but yeah, thank you. Appreciate it. Great point. Staff, want to make any comments on this, or you good? Okay. All right, next item.
6B, Internal Audit Activity Report as of December 31st, 2024. Natalie Minami Valdivia, Principal Internal Auditor.
Good afternoon and Happy New Year, Chair Patajon and fellow Audit Committee members. On behalf of the entire internal audit team, I'd like to wish you all a prosperous, healthy, and fulfilling 2025. We hope you had a wonderful holiday season and were able to enjoy some well-deserved time with your family and friends. As is our normal procedure, I've prepared a presentation to summarize the internal audit activity for the quarter ended December 31st, 2024. So we'll be covering the 7 key areas, including the projects completed, the projects in progress, continuous auditing, outstanding audit items, outstanding priority 1 audit items, and outstanding audit items meeting audit committee discussion criteria, as well as the advisory services. So starting with section 1, projects completed. We've successfully completed 1 project as of the end of December 31st, 2024. And as you can see from this table, that was the PCI compliance audit that was issued on November 1st. I've prepared a presentation to provide you with an audit summary, including the procedures performed and the audit results. As you know, we have a long version of our PCI compliance audit that we present annually. However, as this PCI audit was performed 3 times last year, and the presentation that we are going to make is for the 3rd and last for calendar year 2024. Unless there are any objections, I'm going to go ahead and jump right into the slides that relate directly to the audit that was last performed.
Please proceed.
Thank you. So before we dive into the specifics of this audit, let's briefly discuss why we conduct these PCI DSS audits, and that's the payment card industry data and security standards audits. And these audits, they serve several key purposes. The first and foremost, they help us demonstrate our ongoing commitment to PCI DSS compliance. The second is that by regularly checking our processes, we can proactively identify any potential weaknesses or areas for improvement. The third is that these internal audits also play a vital role in preparing city departments for the annual assessment conducted by our external qualified security assessor, or QSA. Finally, these audits help raise awareness among staff and the importance of the PCI DSS requirements and the critical role they play in protecting sensitive cardholder data. Our primary objective was to assess the ongoing compliance with our internal PCI policy, APM 7-8, and department payment card procedures. The scope of our audit is based on the PCI DSS in-scope requirements as defined by our external QSA. As you know, the city engages an external quality security assessor to conduct a formal PCI DSS assessment each year. To complement this, internal audit performs periodic audits like this one to ensure ongoing compliance and to help departments prepare for the QSA's visit. Our audits cover three main areas: the physical sites, the systems, and the scheduled calendar tasks related to the PCI DSS compliance. And our goal is to review all in-scope sites, systems, and calendar tasks at least once per year prior to the QSA's assessment. So as you can see, currently our PCI DSS scope includes 19 sites, 5 systems, and 29 individual calendar tasks. This particular audit covered the period from June to August 2024, and as I mentioned before, it was the third and final of the planned audits for for calendar year 2024. And for this review, we focused on 5 sites, 0 systems, and 7 calendar tasks. Just as a reminder, the 5 system reviews were removed from the calendar year 2024 audit schedule pending the completion of our PCI DSS version 4.0 gap analysis being performed by our city's QSA. And we were also, it was also awaiting the walkthrough of the new PCI DSS requirements and clarification of the evidence that was going to be necessary to demonstrate the city's compliance. Our audit process involves a combination of site visits, system reviews, and verification of the scheduled calendar tasks. During our site visits, we conducted several activities, including reviewing updated procedures with staff, performing walkthroughs of their credit and transaction processes, verifying their understanding of the PCI policy, comparing device serial numbers, reviewing tamper logs, and confirming that all employees handling cardholder data have completed the requisite PCI training. While we did not conduct for system audits, while we did not conduct system reviews during the specific audit, these reviews are a standard part of our process and will resume in calendar year 2025. And these system reviews will involve reviewing the attestations of compliance, or AOCs, for the third-party service providers, declaring that they have met the PCI DSS standards. Additionally, it will include reviewing contracts to ensure that the third-party service provider is contractually obligated to comply with the PCI DSS, and verifying that the system security configurations comply with the system policy. Turning our attention to the calendar tasks, we reviewed those scheduled for the period of June through August 2024. This review encompassed several key activities related to PCI DSS. As you can see, from the PowerPoint presentation, we confirmed the completion of the annual review and update of both the department payment card acceptance and payment processing procedures and the PCI admin procedure and documents. We also verified that the internal PCI DSS audit and compliance validation was performed. The PCI DSS compliance team held its quarterly meeting. The vulnerability scans were conducted by our information technology department. The PCI DSS admin policy was reviewed and updated, and the payment card incident response plan and test was performed. Finally, we reviewed the third-party service providers' contracts, purchase orders, and attestations of compliance. Now let's move on to the findings of this audit. As I mentioned, we reviewed 5 sites, and we're pleased to report that there were no exceptions noted at any of these locations. As mentioned earlier, no systems were reviewed during this audit. However, we also performed a review of the 7 calendar tasks, and we identified 2 exceptions. So to provide you with a summary of the findings, the 2 exceptions identified related to the timely completion of annual PCI compliance calendar tasks, specifically the annual review and update of the system administrative procedures, and the timely update of 1 expired third-party service provider attestation of compliance, or AOC. Based on our discussions with city staff, this was a result of the city's contract with the QSA expiring last December, and then the transition to the PCI DSS version 4.0. The system administrative procedures were updated as of December 11th, 2024, and they were approved by the QSA. Additionally, the AOC was remediated as of the report issuance date. In conclusion, while we identified 2 exceptions related to the calendar task, we are pleased to share that there were no exceptions noted during our site reviews, and the identified exceptions have been promptly addressed, demonstrating the city's commitment to remaining PCI DSS compliant. Since the completion of this audit, the city's external QSA has also performed its review and issued the city's attestation of compliance, or AOC. The AOC has been submitted to the city's acquiring bank or merchant processor for review, and they have already confirmed that the city has once again met its annual PCI DSS validation requirement for 2024. We will continue to conduct these internal audits to ensure ongoing security of cardholder data. This concludes my presentation. I would like to thank the City Treasurer's Office and the Information Technology Department, as well as City Department staff for their assistance throughout this audit. The Assistant City Treasurer, Gia Murray, and I are here to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Ms. Valdivia. Hopefully I pronounced that right.
Yes.
I have a question for you. So you said you audited 7 locations, right? And out of them, 2 had exceptions?
I believe we audited 5 sites.
Oh, 5 sites, okay.
We audited 5 sites. There were 7 calendar tasks that we reviewed that had exceptions, yes.
And how many auditors worked on this audit?
So both Ani and myself worked on this audit. For the majority of the audit, I was the primary auditor. I believe you had just returned, right? So it's anticipated that Ani will perform the next audit, so she was shadowing and so was also involved in this review.
It's funny, so we see this audit often, almost at least once a year, so I'm trying to remember which one you did, which location, which sites you did last time, but I see you spent 119 hours on this one, which, you know, if it's one FTE, that's almost 3 weeks, but it's basically 2 of you guys basically working on this one, right? So was it, what was the priority on this audit to spend 119 hours on compared to other audits that we could have done?
So it wasn't the sole audit that was being worked on. So as we continue on through our internal audit activity report, we will be reporting that Ani is currently working on a workers' compensation disability settlement audit. And we also, at the same time, work on those continuous audits that we also report later in our report.
Okay. Mr. Willen?
Yeah. Can you pull up the 2 exceptions?
Sure.
So on the first one, just reading into what was written here, it looks like on an annual basis, from an operations perspective, they need to review procedures and say, do we need to update or not? They
Correct.
did not do that, and now they're in the process of doing it?
Correct, and that's a great question. As I mentioned, we changed PCI DSS standards from 3.2.1 to 4.0, and a lot of the changes or a lot of the additional documentation is required in the system portion, and that is why it was skipped in our current review because we were awaiting a gap analysis to help us identify what those new requirements are and what the new supporting documentations that were going to be required to be in compliance with PCI.
Oh, so they might not have known how to update it yet.
Right. I think that basically the QSA that the city has hired is responsible for reviewing to make sure that our updated policies and procedures are up to date. And because there was a lapse in our contract and a new QSA was brought on board late in the game, those policies and procedures had not yet been reviewed.
Okay. And then on the second bullet, AOC, again, the way I'm reading it, it sounds like an SOC. Is that similar? And help me understand the difference between the two.
So the attestation of compliance is basically what we hire our external auditor to do and to complete a self-assessment questionnaire. And it's basically a checklist that they have to go through to determine whether or not the vendor is compliant. And again, for this particular one, Gia can probably help me out. I believe that the vendor had provided an AOC. There are different types of AOCs or different types of self-assessment questionnaires. And I believe for this one, they provided a merchant SAQ rather than a service provider's SAQ.
Oh, okay. So a company that we're utilizing needed to provide this report. They just didn't provide the right one?
A third-party service provider.
Third-party
yes.
service, yeah.
Yes, yes. So I think it went back and forth with our QSA to let them know that because they are they are a service provider to us, and we didn't, rather than the merchant SAQ, we needed this the service provider SAQ.
Got it. Thank you. And it's been remediated since?
Yes, yes.
Okay, thank
So
you.
it's not that they didn't perform the review and go through and check to make sure that they had all valid AOCs. It was just a matter of they couldn't get the correct AOC from the vendor.
So, okay, dumb question. We've been doing this for a long time. Why did we only identify that it was the wrong AOC this time?
Again, I think it has to do with the change from the PCI
Standards.
DSS 3.2.1 to 4.0. Gia, did you have something to add?
There's still some ambiguity. Good afternoon, members of
afternoon.
the committee, Audit Committee. Gia Murray, Assistant City Treasurer. There's still some ambiguity on that. Yes, while that is a result of the update in the version from 3.2.1 to 4.0, but PCI has been around, but it's not very known to a lot of merchants, to a lot of service providers. So they're still confused, even now, as to whether or not they're supposed to provide a document that is supposed to be an attestation, which is an assessment of their credit card environment, whether they are a service provider or a merchant. So in this particular case, we're the merchant. They're a service provider to us. If we're getting someone to collect the credit card information or the credit card, if they do the credit card processing on behalf of the city, they're supposed to give us a document that is for service providers, not the merchant. But because we have two kinds of service providers, one is one who uses our account, merchant account, and they use our merchant processor, and one that doesn't use our merchant account, they use their own merchant account, they use their own processor. They get confused whether they're the merchant or the service provider. So we went back to our QSA and asked them, can we get a clarification from the PCI Council as to whether or not they're supposed to provide us with a document that's for service provider or as a merchant. So our QSA has put in that request, and we're still waiting for that response. But as of now, according to our QSA, as long as they have provided a document documenting who they're using, what controls they have in place, that should be sufficient. And if they need additional information as far as the controls in place or their PCI compliance, then they will ask us for a data flow.
Okay. I guess, so in the change from 3 point whatever to 4, what was our plan to make sure that we're in compliance with the new higher level standard versus just having our QSA do the audit and say, oh, we're missing this or we're missing that? Because we had to know that we were going to shift, right, from one to another. What was our plan so that we'd be in compliance with the new standard?
Well, that would be the QSA giving us a gap analysis of what we have in place and what we're supposed to have in place, and then we match that to what is actually specified in the website of the PCI Security Council.
As part of the audit or as a separate service that the QSA would provide?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand the question.
So the QSA is the person or company that comes and audits that we're in compliance with these standards, correct?
Yes, so they serve not only as the final auditors at the end, so they wear that hat,
And they
but they
also provide
also,
service, that's what I'm
they
asking.
also provide as an advisory,
Got it. Okay.
consultant
So
for
they were
us.
doing it at, the gap analysis was as this, not the auditor.
Correct,
Got it. Thank you.
correct.
I have one quick question. So, as the other committee member just mentioned, we've been doing this for at least 2-3 years now, right? Like in the regular intervals of like quarterly, or like you said, 3 times a year?
Correct.
I guess the question that I have for you is that, is there a reason why we're doing this very frequently, or like, can we do it maybe twice a year? Will that maybe make the process a little bit more efficient? Or there is a requirement? I remember a while back we talked about Glendale being a level 2 service. I forgot what the reference to it is. But like, is there a requirement that we have to do it like 3 times a year or 4 times a year? Or maybe we can just combine it and do it every 6 months. What is your professional opinion in terms of maybe feasibility of like trying to put, I guess the question is that, will that save us more time, or it will be not really different? We'll have to spend just more time doing it twice a year.
I have to, based on my thought process, I'm thinking that it probably would not take us a lot more time, or it wouldn't save us a lot of time to consolidate them into 2. And no, there is not a requirement on how often we perform it. It's just our goal to visit every site, review every system and all of the calendar tasks on an annual basis prior to the QSA's final assessment. So no, there is not a specific requirement. It's just a matter of the timeliness. So if we want to review the AOCs and the contracts, as well as any non-compliance, the period between would be longer, would be elongated.
Oh, okay. That makes sense. Okay.
Maybe to follow up on that, so I believed you were doing this, one, to get ahead of the auditor, to make sure that things were clean, but also the risk of not being PCI compliant would be big. Can you give us a reminder of the risk of not being compliant?
The risk of not being compliant is a few different ones. Let me back up on my slideshow. But basically, the major one is if we're found to be non-compliant, the credit card agencies could prevent us from accepting credit cards as payment. And we would also be responsible for any of the costs related to mitigating any lost data.
Thank you.
Sure.
That's it, right?
No
All
more
right,
questions
no
for
more
me.
questions? All right, great. So let's move on.
Terrific. See if I can get-
Next item, please. Which
So
would
we'll
be-
continue on with the internal audit activity report. So we'll move on to section 2, the projects in progress. As of December 31st, we had 1 project in progress, and this is the workers' compensation disability settlement process audit for human resources that is currently being performed by Senior Internal Auditor Ani Antonasian. We are nearing completion on this audit and actually are in the process of finalizing our report, and we'll be presenting it to you at our next audit committee meeting. Section 3 is continuous auditing. As you know, continuous auditing allows us to efficiently test controls and assess risks using our analytics, our data analytics. This quarter, we focused on, we completed 3 continuous audits. As you can see, one was the procurement card merchants continuous audit. And this was looking for noncompliance with city policies, and we reviewed over 16,500 transactions, totaling $4.4 million. And while the vast majority of the vast majority were compliant. We did identify 4 exceptions involving purchases from restricted merchants by 2 non-safety staff members. These were addressed with the respective departments, and they were corrected as of December 20th. The second one was related to the user access controls for the application IVOS, which is directly related to our workers' compensation claims audit. There were no exceptions found in this particular continuous audit, and the results were shared with management on December 23rd. Finally, the third continuous audit was the user access control audit for Active Directory. And similarly, this was user access control testing for Active Directory against the current or the active employees listing. The results for this audit were shared with management on December 2nd, and the corrections were made as of December 11th. Moving on to section number 4.
Quick question
Sure.
on that last one. So in Active Directory, if you were identifying people that had been termed but are still in Active Directory, what's the cause of that? What's the control that's failing?
So in this last review, the control that was failing was basically we are changing help desk software. So there's a process where when an employee is terminated or leaves the city, a help ticket, basically an email goes out that generates a help ticket for our IT department to disable their use. But right now we're going to a new service called Fresh Service. So I believe that it was a matter of the transition between the 2 systems.
Got it. Thank you.
Sure. So moving on to section 4, outstanding audit items. We conducted follow-up on 33 outstanding audit items across 9 projects. And of the 33 outstanding items, 9 items were fully implemented, 1 was partially implemented, and 23 remain outstanding. Ani and I work with the departments to ensure timely implementation of all of our audit recommendations. So section 5, outstanding priority 1 audit items. I'm pleased to report that there were no outstanding priority 1 audit items identified for this quarter. Section 6 is outstanding audit items meeting audit committee discussion criteria. As per resolution number 2, we bring outstanding items to the audit committee's attention when they meet specific criteria, such as a change in status to not implemented, or if they haven't been implemented within 2 or 3 years of the report issuance date. While there were no items that met these criteria this past quarter, we want to bring to your attention 7 items from the previous quarter related to the public records requests that have not been implemented within 2 years of the report date. These items are detailed in the report, primarily involving updating procedures, templates, and the tracking system, and collaborating with the city attorney's office and information technology department. The implementation of these items has been delayed pending the onboarding of a records management staff. The anticipated completion date for all of these is March 31st, 2025. And as per resolution number 2, Assistant City Clerk Arma Jemian is in attendance to answer any questions that you might have.
I guess when I was looking at this last night, my question is, these all belong to one audit that was a few years old, and it's now 2 years later. Is this just a very complicated process where the issue's written well enough that they could be followed, or what's the root cause of it not being completed 2 years later?
I'm Jamian, Assistant City Clerk, Chair Panahon, and Commissioners. Yes, it's very complicated because you have to work with different departments to make this happen. One of the problems we've had is having somebody on board to run this records management program, and we haven't had that for the last couple of years.
Got it.
Any questions? Anything else? Thank you.
All right, continuing on. Section 7 is advisory services. As you know, internal audit also provides advisory services to various departments. For this past quarter, our team members participated in the Investment Policy Advisory Committee and the PCI Compliance Team for the City Treasurer's Office and the Energy Risk Management Committee for Glendale Water and Power. This concludes our report for the quarter ended December 31st, 2024. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Any questions?
For me?
I just have a question from the list you provided there of pending. Is there a way that we, or maybe the next session, have a list of audit items that maybe haven't been done in the last several years and select like a priority for some of those that we can actually audit within the next time period? Is that possible, or?
Is that other than the list of the items that meet one of the three criteria or the priority one,
Yes.
outstanding priority ones?
Yeah, because I mean, I remember there's been many prior audits before that had a lot of exemption. I can't remember which one it is. I have to review past notes, but I would love to kind of revisit some of those old ones to see how they're doing now after the necessary adjustments that you guys, made and identified.
I'm sorry, can I please clarify? So you're saying the items that have already been closed and fallen off are follow-up?
Correct. I mean, so like, for example, we have, like, there's audits that we haven't seen in years now, and I would love to revisit some of those that had a lot of action items that obviously they were going to be fixed, but, we don't see that after the fact. So I would love to see another new audit on those to see if all those previous changes have taken effect.
If I can,
Because there was recommendations that were made, and, but, we don't hear about if those were accomplished, besides just the date that says it's going to be accomplished by so-and-so's date, but we don't get followed through as to when, it's like, hey, by the way, on this audit, on so-and-so date, there was all these exception items that that were actually now implemented. So we would love to see, like kind of like next session, bring back some of those and say, okay, can we prioritize this specific audit item that had so many exceptions so we can actually revisit and see how that specific audit is doing now?
So if you don't mind, I'd like to share what our quarterly follow-up process consists of. So we do track every single audit observation that we issue in a report, and we do follow through with it on a quarterly basis until it is actually closed. And when we say that it's actually closed, we don't re-audit that particular observation, but in order to close that item, we require the departments to provide us supporting documentation to demonstrate that they've completed that audit item that we've recommended. So I'm not sure if you are suggesting re-auditing audits that we have completed in the past.
Correct. That's pretty much what I'm trying to get to, is re-auditing items that we haven't done in a while that had, things that they needed to fix. And obviously if they were done, that's fine, but still re-audit it just to see if there's any, exceptions additional that they might encounter.
So maybe a thought on that. As you prepare your plan on an annual basis, you're doing a few things. You're saying, what departments haven't we looked at for a number of years? What departments have we audited that have had a lot of issues? And I believe you probably have some risk assessment to select which ones you're going to do. Maybe if you can talk us through that, that might meet what you're talking about. But if it doesn't, let's keep going on the question. Does that help? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
And that... Sure. So let me describe how we go about doing our risk assessment process. So on an annual basis, we conduct a risk assessment. As of last year, due to our staffing, we actually meet with the departments on a biannual. We began to meet with them on a biannual basis. But all of these audits that we've performed in the past, as well as any audits that are brought up from departments or are brought up based on any analytics that we perform based on contracts or purchase orders that are outstanding, are brought to each of the city departments. And on a biannual basis, we'll share those reports and meet with them to discuss any audit projects that are high on their priority list. But additionally, like you mentioned, those audits that we have already performed, those audits don't fall fall out of our audit universe. And then we ask the departments to rank prioritize their audit engagements, and then we perform, based on our risk assessment, we create a list, and we submit that list to the city manager's office to be reviewed and to assist us in selecting the audit projects for the upcoming year. Yes, and that, I'm sorry, and that is the report that comes to commission every July, or the audit committee. I'm sorry? Yes, thank you, Lucy. And that report is the one that you all sign off on, and that goes to city council on your behalf.
All right.
But if there's, Chair Parajon, if there's a certain time period, if you want us to reflect back and produce a list of the several X number of years of the audits that have been done and present that to the committee members for you to review and identify some additional ones that you'd like to contribute, I'm certain the staff would be open to receiving those.
Yeah, because for public records, I mean, we have them all in the audit reports online, and if you just go through the list, you'll be able to see all the various audit completions that we've done, and then there's some that I'm like, yeah, I remember that specific one. I'm surprised why we haven't looked into that again, just to make sure that what was completed was done, but also just to make sure everything's nice and clean. Just because, just because we haven't seen the department 4 years ago, who knows, there's staff changes or whatever could have happened. Now things are new now, so we want to make sure we revisit some of those old items. I think maybe as a team here, be able to select audits that we feel that maybe will be important for the community to be more aware of, and then just pretty much identify, just items from our end. It's like, because, we see the PCI all the time, which is great, but it looks like that one has a couple things here and there, but we don't see, like, for example, I haven't seen the one for the fire department in a long time, or the police department for a while, that we can try to bring back and see. Nowadays, we have to look at it where everything's being questioned. I mean, I look at the other cities out there, activities, and certain departments are looked at more carefully to see if we're maybe overspending in areas that we shouldn't be, or too much staffing here and there, you name it. And I know there's some audits that we've done that looks at various things that we want to make sure that there's an equal state everywhere, because I know there's one that I can't remember on the top of my head, that it's part of the department that gives contributions to nonprofits, for example, other outside nonprofits, for building enhancements, stuff like that. We haven't looked at that in a long time, but I just want to see, what's going on there again. So there's just a lot of things. I mean, I know there's staffing where there's just so much the audit team can do, but also I think there's also things that I think it's higher priority to look at, so that we can give the residents of Glendale a good assurance that we are asking for certain things because we feel that's in need here to look at.
We're trying to get a clear direction, and we were just barring on probably coming back to you with the last 3 years of audits that have been completed, to come back and have you consider that at the April meeting, so that by the July meeting, when we're ready for the recommendation, you have the opportunity to have input. But we can give you the last 3 years. That's not all encompassing. If you feel like the audit that perhaps you're remembering isn't covered in the last 3 years, or there's a particular department area that you need to further review, that would be the opportunity to offer that suggestion so that it can get incorporated into the overall plan.
Exactly. That's perfect.
So we can do it that way,
Okay.
if that's okay.
That'd be great. Thank you. All righty. Next item, I guess.
Item number 7, Audit Committee or staff comments.
Anyone has any comments here? No one? Yes, sir. Mr. Tatalian.
Very much, Committee Chair. I just wanted to add on to the comment that or the response I tried to provide earlier. I apologize, I don't have all the detailed information in front of me. What you're looking at in the annual financial report is nothing more than what I would equate to or compare it to the account balance in a bank statement, not the actual transactions that make it up. So while the response I provided wasn't inaccurate, I understand what you're asking now, which is why does the expenditure side fluctuate so much in the out years? And the reason for that is because there is a significant increase in that 1 year in our PERS rates, our pension rates, both on the miscellaneous side.
Sorry,
and
can you repeat that? I missed a couple.
Sure.
I missed a couple sentences.
The reason why the expenditure side of that page, I guess, Roman numeral 10 of the annual financial report goes up a little bit more significantly than in other years, even though it's only a $4 million overall cost increase, is because our PERS liability or our PERS cost for that individual year actually goes up. On the miscellaneous side, you'll see an increase from 34.97% to 37.4%, and on the safety side, it goes up from 65.3 to 68.02. I don't know if that's exactly $4 million, but that's primarily the driver of the expenditure fluctuation in that year. What you don't see on this page in these numbers, because again, it gets into a level of detail that you wouldn't find in this document, is that you also have a significant reduction in revenues that year. Because we anticipate the closure of the Shoal Canyon landfill revenue of about $8 to $10 million a year, depending on the tonnage that's deposited there. But at the same time, we begin to dip into that Section 115 trust to offset some of that and smooth out that dip. I hope that answers it. I felt bad that I couldn't give you all of that information off the top of my head, but you can understand why.
Thank you.
No, anyone else? Okay, Ms.
If I could make a few quick comments. On behalf of the internal audit team, I'd like to express our sincere gratitude to the audit committee members for your continued commitment and dedicated service. Your guidance and your oversight are invaluable to our work, and we deeply appreciate your support in ensuring the city's financial integrity and operational effectiveness, and look forward to continuing to work with you in the coming year. Also, I know it's been a while since we last met, so although Ani returned in September, I'd like to formally welcome Ani back and congratulate her on her and her family on the new addition to their family. I've missed her expertise and positive contributions, so I'm happy to have her back. I'd also like to extend a special thank you to the Assistant City Manager and Interim Director of Finance, John Tokhtalian, for advocating for and securing additional staff for our internal audit team. The additional support is essential for us to effectively manage our workload and to continue to provide high-quality services to the city. Finally, I'm excited to announce that we will have a new employee, Daniel Mitchell, joining our team starting Monday, February 3rd. He'll be working as an internal auditor on our team and will be a valuable asset, a valuable addition. So I look forward to making his formal introduction at the next audit committee. Meeting. This concludes my staff comments, and we look forward to a productive and successful year ahead of us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Valvidia. All righty. Anyone else? Great. Next item, 8.
Item number 8, new business.
Any business? I have a question here for the team, for the staff, or actually Ms. Petian. In regards to some of the requests that we had by our speaker that requested to speak today, is there anything that we can add in there to see if we can get maybe some of those items identified as action items for next meeting?
Typically, we would need to get at least 2 individuals on a committee to request that a report be prepared. And so that's what we would be looking for. understanding that it would require clearer direction from the audit committee as to specifically what you're looking for so that a report can be prepared by staff.
Okay. I know one of the pressing questions, I mean, there's a nice list that we have here, but one of the pressing one was more the staffing detail of the fire department. Just based on the campers that we got here. See if someone can break that out for us so that we can have that just to look at next time, if possible.
I'm not so sure that that's, hold on one second.
You-
sir.
What is the specific ask? I mean, we need to make sure
right
that
now,
it is an
I
audit
think-
function.
So the line item right now is identifying basically details of the fire department staff. Right now, it's a summary level by sworn officers, sworn individuals, and also civilians.
Within the specific document that you're referring to that's prepared by finance?
Yes.
So that would not necessarily be an audit function. That's information that could be obtained by a Public Records Act request.
So there's that
So we
available.
could certainly
Okay.
produce that, but amending how a report is prepared is not something that could be directed by this. You can express a preference. You could, share your recommendation, but ultimately, it's up to the finance staff to put together a report that is workable for them and the city council.
Okay. Any other new business?
And I would also add that some of that information is already available in the budget book. I believe we break out some of our staffing positions in more detail in the annual budget books.
There's detail in there?
Yeah, it'll show the department, the fully authorized position for that department, and the titles of those positions. I'm getting a blank look, but I'm pretty sure I'm right.
There's so many reports out there, right?
But if Mr. Milano would like that detail and it's not available and I'm incorrect, by all means, we can absolutely provide that for him for each department.
Okay.
I guess I have a more general question related to that. This was, I think, the first time that we had a public commenter for the many long years that I remember, at least. But it specifically says that it's not subject to discussion. So whatever comments that somebody makes, we are not going to have a discussion regarding that. So if the question is then if there is something that is like we find it reasonable, we want to maybe take a look at it, that should be introduced by one member as a new business item, and then that will open up an opportunity for us to have a discussion. Okay.
Yes, and we just have to be mindful that this is the audit committee. So for example, if a question's being presented that is more germane to, say, the Civil Service Commission, it should be directed to that commission, and this committee may not be able to act on it. So if it is germane to the work of this committee, then certainly it's something that you can add to a future agenda, allowing staff enough time
I see.
to put a report together.
Okay, thank you.
Now, another question, sorry. Is this the third year now for Clifton, Larson, and Allen? Do you know? Yeah,
Year.
it's the fifth year now? Oh, they have 1 week, okay.
There's 1 year left on their contract.
Somehow it feels forever now. All right.
We typically cycle through every five or so years, 5 to 6 years. You don't want to stay with the same auditing firm too long.
Correct, that's fine. All right, just checking on, make sure the timeline. All right, cool. Well, I'm good. Next line item,
Item number 9, adjournment.
motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
All right. We don't need a roll call for that, right? All right. Well, we're adjourned then. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Appreciate it. Until next time.
Thank you.